763.
All right. So what are we talking about today?
It's Valentine's Day, so we thought we'd spend a little time talking about togetherness.
All right.
No, this is not a dating service. We're not trying to hook up our single DIY rock stars.
All right.
Our topic today is to share what we've learned over the years about collaborating. So it's 6 tips for collaborating better, either online or in person.
Okay. All right. So what's the first tip?
First tip is go into any collaborative process understanding that we're all human and that we all have emotions.
Yes.
And that is going to affect.
It's going to affect your collaboration.
Yes.
Go into collaboration with an open mind. That's what I think you have to do is that I don't think that you should take things that you think you've already got finished in your head.
Ah, okay. I like that.
Collaborations. Unless you are just open to saying, hey, I'm going to be open to getting other ideas.
Okay.
That might be contrary to where I was thinking this was going to go.
Okay.
Because to me, that's what collaboration is about. Collaboration is not about someone affirming what you already think you're going to do, as much as it seems like it would be about, to me, getting something else. You know, or sometimes it's like, I think that's what John Lennon and Paul McCartney, they used to have this thing where maybe one would get stuck. Okay. And say, hey, you know, I need what they would call a middle 8, which would be like the change. Okay. It's like, I don't have another 8. Right. You know, so it's sort of like, you know, Getting Better from Sgt. Pepper, you know. So one of the things that Lennon came up with was, you know, McCartney was saying, hey, you know, got to admit, it's getting better. Yeah. And John Lennon came up with, can't get much worse. You know what I'm saying? So, right, so he added something that when he needed to get to that next step in that song. Or like if you listen to A Day in the Life, there's this whole thing where it's, you know, it has this thing where John is basically taking things from newspaper articles and it's got this one feel to it, and then it goes to this dream part and then it's like, I woke up, fell out of bed, drugged wrong across my head. That's Paul. All of a sudden, and there's you can hear the difference between the two, right? That how they kind of came in and kind of finished off the idea. I like that. And so, you know, I'm not saying that's the only way that you can collaborate, but I think that a lot of times that way you see it as necessary, and then you're open to whatever. Yeah, what it's gonna bring to the table. Oh, I like that. That actually sounds like 2 or 3 tips at once, because that's actually practical. I like that. Yeah. Well, and we were saying as a part of the going into it, knowing that we're all human, you mentioned when we were talking about it ahead of time that money changes things. So knowing the fact that you're human and at first you're just people you know, maybe you're jamming together, maybe you're friends, maybe you're just, you know, you think somebody's just adding a small part. You had the core idea and they're just adding a small part. But if you don't think about it as you know, as another person, and once the money gets involved in the fame or whatever, that they're going to want their share, then you're probably going to end up, you know, having trouble from that person. Yeah, you know, I think for me, I think a lot of times it was like a pride issue, you know. What do you mean? Where this was never really an issue for me. So, like, you know, early on, you know, a friend of mine, we were, you know, shopping for record deals, and this guy came up with this saying. He was like, you know, what are you? Because, you know, we were concerned about the songs. We were like, hey, you know, how we can make sure the songs don't get stolen? You know, we got these, you know, these things of gold that we are giving and we're entrusting you with. You know, we know that these are the best songs that have ever been written. You know, during this century of songwriting, we know this, and so we're entrusting you with this. Yeah. You know, and so how do we make sure that, you know, you take it someplace and we don't end up hearing it on the radio because people know that these are smash hits. Yeah. So, you know, he kind of came back and he said, well, you know, if you're that concerned, I need to know something. What are you? Are you a Crisco can or an oil well? And I was like, what does that mean? And it's like, well, you know, a Crisco can is kind of like, you know, when you use it up, there's nothing else left. You know, so if these is it, then I get it. You know, but if you're an oil well, then hey, it's going to be gushing all the time. Right. So from that point on, I took a whole different view of songs. Okay. You know, so me and that, I was kind of like, there's going to be other ideas. There's going to be tons of them. Right. And there was also the thought that if this thing is a hit, you have to come back to me to get this idea.
Right.
To get this feel,
I'm the source.
Right. Because
Yes.
I'm the source. I'm the oil well.
Yes.
And as long as I'm the source of the oil, you're going to have to come back to me to get it.
Right.
So that kind of changed things. So I would strand ideas with people.
Okay.
You know, it kind of like, okay, yeah, I don't mind. You could take that idea or whatever else. Or even when I was with people, I always just made sure that it was like, okay, we will, you know, do a cold songwriting credit.
Right.
You know?
Right.
But understanding that sometimes this kind of stuff doesn't get mapped out, then I think it's a good idea if you're going into it with that idea of, hey, we're going to do this for, you know, if somebody's going to shop something or whatever else, that you get things down on paper.
Oh, okay. So that's one of our other tips. So we'll skip down to that. I like that.
Right.
Actually,
I'll kind of blend these two together.
Okay.
You know, so it's the two together, meaning that when you come together, you know, kind of decide on, you know, what are going to be the terms in which you're going to work on, right? Work on stuff. Or as you start to work things out, you know, and you kind of see how things are going, kind of at some point in time decide, hey, look, we should probably memorialize or put on paper how this is working out. You know, whatever is your function within the collaborative process. So whether you're a writer, whether you are someone who's just playing on the songs, or maybe you're arranging the songs, or if you're serving as a producer or whatever else, that you need to say, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is what I expect for what I'm doing. You know, if you're a hired hand, then spell that out. That, hey, look, I'm a hired hand, and this is what I expect. And maybe you should have it where you get paid, maybe not per song, maybe per hour. However it works best for you. You know, but to establish that that's what it is. And then establish what degree of credit you're going to get for songwriting. You should, all that stuff should be, And then, especially nowadays, since these masters are what can be released, who owns the master? So these are other aspects that you need to decide, you know. So, you know, who owns the composition and who owns the master? So the composition is the actual song that you wrote. The master is the recording of that song. So those are two different things as to who owns what. Or what company owns what. So.
All right, like that. All right. Okay, so that goes to number 2, which was, as you work in a certain capacity, come up with a contract for the collaboration, whether it is a formal contract, like maybe a stock agreement, or whether you go to an attorney to have it drawn up, or whether it is just you guys deciding and writing an email, a couple of notes, whatever it is that you agree on early on before things get complicated.
And if you're writing an email, well, there are things that you can do now, because there are documents like e-signature programs like DocuSign that you can use to sign it. You need some kind of way to make sure that, because if you send an email and you never get an email back, or
then you haven't necessarily agreed on
or you haven't, or just getting that whole thing, oh, that wasn't my email address, or whatever. I'm just saying that what you want to do is you want to make sure that there is no way of arguing about stuff. You know, just get it in writing while you're on friendly terms. Because once things fall out, and then you decide, well, we're going to get this in writing, and you're disagreeing. You're not going to get anything in writing. You're not going
to agree on it.
Because you're not going to agree on it. Whereas when things are going well, you can get that meeting of the minds, and you can decide, this is what we agreed upon.
Okay, I like this. So just make that, to make that a part of that collaboration process, a natural part of it. That they'll know that if I'm working with those Prejippie people, they're gonna be sitting down, taking some notes, and want me to sign it or whatever it is.
Whoever you're working with, just kind of like, hey, look, you know, we've collaborated on this thing, and this is what, you know, we feel like, you know, should be the way that things should be kind of ironed out, as far as, you know, who owns copyright. Who owns copyright, meaning that's who owns the rights to the composition, and then who owns the master, you know, or the sound recording, who owns the rights to that. So
Yeah, so that actually you've already covered number 3, which is write down and agree on whatever terms or objectives you are planning ahead of time.
Right,
so
yeah.
we like that. All right, so, and then you've already handled number 4.
Right.
If folks contribute, you probably want to just go ahead and give a co-write so that it is clear. And I know I was listening to a podcast where the woman was saying that as the basic songwriter,
Right.
she played guitar, and she would basically have, you know, her lyrics, her melody, and her guitar part. So basically, she had the whole song written,
Right.
but then she would bring it to her quote-unquote band, which were kind of more or less hired hands.
Yeah.
And then they would add parts, and then there would be a dispute about who wrote the song.
Right.
And generally, I think what you're saying is, in those instances, just go ahead and consider it a co-write.
Yeah,
and then that way, it'll be easier.
It will be it, but you know, at the same token, I do understand the other part of it, because that's kind of what happened with Sting with the Police. So you know, early on, you know, with the Police, their songs like Roxanne, Message in a Bottle, you know, like a lot of the Police's, well, probably the lion's share of the Police's greatest hits are just written by Sting.
Okay.
You know, that's the way that they're contributing. Even though, if you listen to those recordings,
you know that,
I mean, arguably, you can say, you know, Stewart and Stuart Copeland doing the drums, and Andy Summers added a lot to those songs, and you know, and there was a lot of arguing between them, and arranging and all the rest of this type of stuff. So, you know, I'm pretty sure those guys probably think back and say, probably should have got a songwriting credit on that. So yeah, so that could be a bone of contention. So that's why a lot of times it is good to just kind of say, let's establish this. That, hey, you're a hired hand, and this is what I'm expecting you to do. But these songs are mine. And we know this as you're coming in.
And then it kind of squashes that argument later on.
Yeah, you get it written down and it's firmly there, then that definitely helps a lot.
Yeah, so. I like that. And then number 5, I think this is kind of the golden rule for all of it, is treat others the way you want to be treated. You know, so be careful how you talk to folks. Yeah. You know, that you want to end up, I mean, to me, I don't think you want to make enemies, especially if these are people who are maybe relatives, maybe buddies, maybe, you know, so think about how you talk to them and exercise empathy. So, or even if you want to make your point, listen to what their point is and try, you know, to kind of reflect. Like, so I think what you're saying is, because you did that harmony part, and it seems like the song bloomed at that part, that is why you want credit. You know, that kind of repeat some of the things back to them. So use language where it seems like there's some empathy, even if you want to end up saying, no, but I wrote, you know, what is the basis for the song or whatever it is. Right. So that you can come upon some compromise, which is actually the last 2.
Well, that's kind of going back to the other point, which is kind of like, you know, sometimes it just could be the fact that, you know, money does change everything. So if you do something with a group of people and it does turn out to be successful, and people don't feel like they are getting enough credit for stuff, and that's why it helps to kind of have things written down at the beginning, so you can say, hey, well, you know, you agree to such and such, you know, so that, you know, at the end of the day, it's kind of like, well, there is this, you know, so even if somebody wants to sue you, you know, there is that aspect of it. But kind of moving back just a little bit with respect to collaboration, because one of the other parts that I think needs to be kind of brought out are samples. So meaning that sometimes you end up inadvertently collaborating by the use of samples or using other people's material. And that's something that you got to be very careful of, especially to the extent you start making money off of it. Because if you sample somebody's stuff and it's an unauthorized sample and you do make money on it down the line, they can come and take all the money. You know, so they can do that, and there are groups out there, you know, who are very quick to do that, and they have a very strong legal team that goes out and do it. So, and what you have to understand is that intellectual property, because it's non-tangible property, you have to be, well, I think, you know, most lawyers are especially vigilant with respect to making sure that they're enforcing those rights, because sometimes if you don't enforce the right, you can lose the right.
Okay, right.
You know, it's just like with trademarks and all the rest of that kind of stuff. Again, you know, we call things Velcro, you know, not because of the fact that, you know, that's kind of what this thing was called as far as sticking one.
It was sticky tape, right? Oh, they call it hook and groove.
Right.
Hook and groove type is what it really actually functionally is.
Velcro is the company,
right?
You know, and so that was the same thing with Xerox. Xerox had to start fighting for that mark to make sure that they didn't lose that, because people kept saying, "I'm going to go and make a Xerox of this."
Instead of a photocopy.
Of this, right? And it's like, no, don't use our name for that.
Right.
So that's why a lot of times with respect to copyright infringement, you know, these groups are very litigious when it comes to that, because they don't want their stuff to inadvertently kind of fall into the public domain because they've slept on their rights and allow people to use things without enforcing it. So some people come in very heavy-handed with that. So so be careful with the use of samples. If you are using other people's stuff and you do anticipate that you're going to be doing something as far as making money off or something, make sure you get those samples cleared.
Right.
Or if you're going to be using it and it's going to be used by somebody else.
Right.
Because copyright is, you don't have to intend to make an unauthorized copy of something in order to be guilty of infringement.
Ooh, that actually opens up a whole. We actually could do a whole nother episode on those YouTube people who use it, like, and they'll do a cover or something on Facebook and they'll say, "Oh, the rights don't belong to me," but they'll proceed with the cover.
And then, I mean, again, that's even almost worse.
Yeah.
Because you're basically saying, "I know this isn't mine, and I know I've made a copy that's unauthorized."
Right.
So anyway. Go ahead.
So yeah, the bottom line is you don't necessarily want to blow up the relationship in order to win, but because we're all human and we're coming together in a spirit of togetherness, there may end up being some disputes along the way.
There might be. And then the last part with respect to collaboration, make sure it's natural. You know, meaning that, you know, you should like what the other person is bringing to the table. And to the extent that you don't like or it doesn't work, I'm not saying that you got to be rude and say, "Hey man, what you're doing is just really effing up my song." You know, no, you don't have to be like that. I mean, you can be nice, but maybe that's just not the person that you collaborate with in the future. You know, you had this one time, it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And that's fine, but you have to, don't start compromising, saying, "Oh, okay, I want to be nice." Too. And so now you end up doing, you know, 10, 12 songs with somebody and you don't like any of them, and you don't like exactly what you're doing or whatever else. It's not fun.
You don't want to. You don't even want to show your face on the project after a while.
Or you're not enjoying it. And so the thing is that you want the collaborative process to bring something out of you that, you know, you couldn't bring out yourself, and you want it to be fun, you want it to be enriching, and you want to be satisfied with the end product.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
And so, in the spirit of togetherness, of course, we're just scratching the surface. What tips have you guys come across over your time for collaboration? Again, we're in this time where it seems like we're separated, but I've seen a lot of Zoom, or there's like an app where you can get together and somebody puts a song up and folks end up adding parts. So again, you might want to keep in mind some of these tips as you proceed. And then what have you found? Yeah,
there's tons of apps that's out there like that. I know people do that by just sharing projects, whether it's a Logic project or a Pro Tools project or whatever it might be. You know, there's just so many different ways to go around, you know, to virtually collaborate with people.
Yeah, right. So make sure you take into account some of those parameters, just in case something ends up finding its way to, you know, be a hit on the radio or whatever.
Yeah, whatever it might be. So,
what's going on? I keep saying that, but what's going on?
Yeah, well, so we're still doing Sugar Fit. I mean, we always gonna be doing Sugar Fit.
We're doing Sugar Fit until we're doing something else.
Right.
We do have a link for vinyl, so don't forget, it's in the description below.
And you can stream Sugar Fit everywhere. Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, wherever you want to go.
Amazon.
Go to Bandcamp. You can get it from Bandcamp. You can get a download from Bandcamp. You can get CD Baby. You can get the CD. So whatever, if you want to write to us to get a CD, whatever you want to do, you know, email us, whatever, get the CD. You can do it that way.
Yeah. And if you dig the vibe and want to be a part of the tribe, make sure you
subscribe.
We're wishing you love, peace, and